morning, or depending on when you're watching this, good afternoon, good evening, or good night. My name is Ross, and as always told, out of Voice of Radio. So today, I am back to tell you that Cinderace VMAX is actually a legitimately awesome deck. We're not talking good fringe deck, we're talking legitimate awesomeness. Now, big point to make here, VMAX Rising has been legal for 1 weekend. And Cinderace is looking awesome. Just remember, 1 weekend does not make an entire format. But Cinderace V and Cinderace VMAX are now legal for tournament play, and they are seeing play over in Japan, and I'll tell you what, ladies and gentlemen, it's done well. The lovely Code64X over on Twitter has sent me a couple of deck lists. There was a City League over in Japan, not a tiny tournament, where Cinderace VMAX took both first and one of the 2 top 4 places. It is actually genuinely legit. We're not talking a 4-person tournament here. We are talking a decent-sized tournament. I got a message from one of my Patreons a couple of days ago, the lovely Legally Sarcastic. Is Cinderace VMAX as good as I think it looks? Yeah, seems like it might actually be. Now, Cinderace V is fine. 210 HP is fine. Retreat cost 2 is actually kind of awkward and annoying, but don't worry about it, because the ability says if there is a stadium in play, it has no retreat cost, so that's alright. Free energy 140. I mean, look, you can pay the attack cost using a welder and an energy from your hand, and then you're hitting 140 in a single turn. And Reshiram and Charizard doesn't have a particularly good free energy attack, in that it doesn't have a free energy attack. And if you look at the other fire Pokemon that are generally played, free energy 140 is better than most of them do. It's not stunning, but in the early game it's better than most. But it's not really Cinderace V we're worried about. Fun little attack, nice little attack, but it is Cinderace VMAX that makes us look at this and go, oh yeah, no, that's going to win a bunch of tournaments. You see, it's got 320 HP, which is pretty high. And it's got the attack counter. 1 fire, 1 colourless energy, 30 damage. This attack does as much damage as this Pokemon received from attacks during your opponent's last turn. And the wording here is extremely important. It does not say as much damage as is on it. If you look at something like Reshiram and Charizard, Outrage, 30 damage plus 10 more for each damage counter on this Pokemon. But no. This does extra damage for each damage it took last turn. What that means is if you heal, let's say something like Mallow and Lana, yes, of course it's played in this deck, you still do the extra damage. So by healing with Mallow and Lana, you don't take 120 damage off you, but then reduce how much damage you do by 120. You just take 120 damage off you. That makes a phenomenal difference. And this is really the hook of Cinderace VMAX. You've got 320 HP, which makes you exceedingly difficult to KO. And if your opponent doesn't one-hit KO you, you hit them back even harder, and you don't need to leave damage on you, you can just smash. We've seen lots of good outraging Pokemon in the past. I mean, Reshiram for a long time, just by itself, was a great outraging Pokemon. For a long time, Tauros GX was a really good outraging Pokemon. The difference here is you don't need to keep the damage on you in order to do extra damage. It's hard for me to overstate how much of a difference that actually makes. There is another attack here, free energy 170 plus burn. Well, 170 alone is enough to KO stuff like Keldeo GX or Morpeko GX, so that's kind of nice. But the burn puts an extra 20 damage on there. So now you're hitting 190, so stuff like Blacephalon all of a sudden is going down. Stuff like Ultra Necrozma all of a sudden is going down. And the burn is going to stay on there if they flip a Tails, then they take an extra 20 after their turn. And then an extra 20 after yours of another Tails, etc, etc. And again, free energy means Welder and another energy from your hand and you're off. Flame Ball Max is a decent attack, but it really is counter that we're loving. Now the other thing is, you might end up with an opponent going, ha 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 ha, I'm just going to not hit you until I can one-hit KO you. and then you can't hit me with big damage with your first attack. That's where your second attack comes in. It's hard for your opponent to be deliberately not hitting you when you're doing 170 damage plus burn. They're kind of backed into a corner there. Now, it really is a Cinderace VMAX deck. Now, I've got 2 lists, but only one is an actual list. And in terms of other Pokemon, there are some others we might want to play. Heatran GX is a very nice option. It's got an ability that moves damage over to it, and a GX attack that does 50 damage for each energy on it. So the theory here is you've got a bunch of energy peppered around the field, you bring Heatran GX in for one giant GX attack to get one giant KO. And you're not playing any other GXs really, so it works quite nicely. Except you are actually playing one copy of Mega Lopunny and Jigglypuff, because it does decent damage. Now this is going to get worse and worse as time goes by, but for the time being it's still kind of good. Free energy, bearing in mind Welder, 60 damage plus 60 more for each EX and GX your opponent has in play. Again, this is just a really nice attack to bring out every so often to smash. Simple as that. It's not going to win every game, but against a really EX or GX heavy deck, it's a really nice attacker, it's a nice tech. Outside of that, we've got Dedenne GX for early game consistency. Discard your hand, draw 6 cards, that's pretty good. We've got Jirachi for any point in the game consistency. Look at the top 5 cards of your deck, find a trainer card, put it in your hand, go to sleep. Use Escape Board to retreat, even if you're asleep. And then we actually see Ninetales. Ninetales is your gusting here. Ninetales, you discard 2 fire energy from your hand, and then you bring an opponent's Pokemon from the bench up to the active. It's a no-brainer. It's great. It's brilliant. It's a phenomenal card. And if you can afford to play it, it's a good idea. Now, the other list, we don't have a lot of information, but we do know that it plays Volcanion. We literally had this picture, which just shows Cinderace, Cinderace VMAX, and Volcanion, as long as a GX counter. But essentially what it does is you get to do 110 for 2 energy, if there are 2 other energy anywhere else on your field. It's a nice non-GX attack, as in single prize attacker. And for 1 fire energy, search your deck for a fire energy and attach it to any of your Pokemon. But if it's your first turn and you're going second, you get 3. Decent single prize attacker and some energy acceleration if you go second. It's a good inclusion. And we do actually see 1 copy of the Mimikyu from Cosmic Eclipse that turns off EX and GX abilities for Pokemon with any damage counters on. It's not going to affect you. By the time your Dedenne hit the field, they've already used their ability, but it could be nice against any decks that are relying on it a little bit more. Now, in terms of trainer cards here, we've got 4 Quick Ball, obviously we do, it searches basics, and then 4 Pokemon Communication, just in case you want to get some non-basic Pokemon, evolutions if you will. 3 copies of Switch, so we can get our Jirachi in and out the active, as well as making sure we've also got Cinderace VMAX when we need it, or indeed Heatran. And then obviously 2 copies of Escape Board, because Jirachi and Escape Board they're kind of good friends. Welder is our supporter of choice here. We play a full 4, that's pretty obvious. But there are a couple of tag teams as well. Shouldn't surprise you at this stage to know that we do play Mallow and Lana. It's a switch where you heal 120. And in a deck that hits more damage but doesn't need you to not heal, that's pretty gosh darn good. We then also have Cynthia and Caitlyn. It recovers stadium cards while allowing you to draw cards. It's kind of a no-brainer. And then being a fire deck, we've got Giant Half to search energy out of the deck. We've got Fire Crystal to search energy out of the discard pile. And we've got Heat Factory Prism Star for a little bit of extra draw power. Oh, and then we got 2 Reset Stamp because it's Reset Stamp. You put your opponent down to a hand size equal to their remaining prizes. Great comeback card. It's in every deck. Don't be terribly surprised. I am slightly surprised. I thought Cinderace VMAX was a good card, but I also thought it was maybe a little bit gimmicky and maybe not quite good enough, and I was slightly apprehensive. Well, ladies and gentlemen, it is, at least at the beginning, looking like it's right at the top of our higher end of expectations. I'm a little bit excited. But I want to know from you guys, is this a deck that was on your radar? I don't know, some of you it was. You messaged me about it. But what about the rest of you? Was this on your radar? Did you think it was great? Do you think it's a flash in the pan, or do you think it's here to stay? Let me know in the comment section. Go nuts. Be nice. And then make sure you like this video, subscribe to this channel, follow me on Twitter at @TheWassy, and Twitch for some live action at twitch.tv/PTCGRadio. If you want to support the channel, get some bonus podcasts and all that good stuff, head on over to patreon.com/PTCGRadio, where you can do exactly that. And please do make sure you're checking out youtube.com/WassyPlays, where we talk about a whole bunch of games that don't have any Pokemon in, but are still very much worth your time. But by far the most important thing, as always, look after yourselves till next time, would ya? Thank you very much for watching. My name's Ross, and you've been watching PTCG Radio.